I had always been the kind of person who followed the rules, seatbelt fastened, cruise control set, not even a scratch on my record. That night, I was just trying to get home after a long shift at the hospital. The streets were empty, and the soft hum of my tires on the wet pavement was almost soothing. I wasn't speeding, wasn't swerving, just driving, lost in thought, when the flashing red and blue lights lit up my rearview mirror. My heart jumped into my throat. I pulled over to the shoulder, confused and slightly anxious. I rolled down the window as the officer approached, his flashlight shining briefly across my dashboard before landing gently on my face. "Evening, ma'am. License and registration?" he asked, his voice calm and surprisingly warm. I handed them over without hesitation, my mind racing through every possible thing I might have done wrong. "You've got a busted taillight," he said after a moment, glancing at the rear of my car. "Might have just gone out." "No big deal, just wanted to let you know." He was young, mid-30s maybe, with a calm demeanor that didn't match the usual stern authority I expected. As he handed back my documents, our eyes met for a second longer than necessary. "Drive safe," he said with a soft smile before turning back to his cruiser. I watched him go, an odd feeling tugging at my chest. I couldn't explain it, but something about that interaction stayed with me as I pulled back onto the road. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, not just like another driver, but as if he recognized me from somewhere or saw something familiar in me. It was brief, but it lingered. For the rest of the drive, I couldn't shake the feeling. I kept glancing at my rearview mirror, not out of fear, but almost as if I expected him to still be there. It was irrational, sure, but I couldn't help it. The way his voice sounded, the subtle curve of his smile, it replayed in my mind like a melody I couldn't forget. When I got home, I checked the taillight. Sure enough, it was out. A tiny detail, but it validated the stop. Still, the memory of that moment with him made me pause longer than I should have. I stood there in my driveway, staring at the light and thinking about his eyes. I'd never had a traffic stop make me feel anything but annoyed or anxious. This time was different. I didn't even know his name. Just a brief exchange under a quiet sky, and somehow it had taken up space in my mind. I told myself it was nothing, just the afterglow of a stressful day and an unusual encounter. But deep down I knew that wasn't the end of it. Something had started in that moment, something I didn't yet understand. 2 days later, I walked into my favorite coffee shop before work, and there he was, Officer A. He wasn't in uniform this time, just a hoodie and jeans, standing in line like any other customer. He noticed me right away and smiled, that same soft curve of the lips that I hadn't been able to forget. "Taillight fixed?" he asked casually as I approached. I nodded, slightly flustered but amused. He paid for my coffee before I could even protest. "Consider it a thank you for not giving me attitude the other night," he joked. We ended up sitting together while we waited. It was supposed to be a quick chat, but time seemed to stretch. He wasn't just charming, he listened, laughed at the right moments, and didn't make it feel forced. When I finally glanced at my phone, I was almost late for work. As I got up, he said, "Same time tomorrow?" I hesitated for half a second, then nodded. That became our thing. Morning coffees turned into shared lunches. We never called them dates, but they felt like it. Ray had a quiet way about him that made everything seem easier. He told me he'd moved to town a few months ago, transferred from another district. Said he liked the slower pace, the smaller community, fewer distractions. I didn't pry too much. He asked about me, my job, my family. When I mentioned I hadn't dated in a while, he smiled and said, "Sometimes it takes the right kind of quiet to hear something real." One night, after 3 weeks of these slow, subtle meetings, he walked me to my car after dinner. It wasn't planned. We were supposed to just grab food and go our separate ways. But the way he looked at me, there was nothing casual about it. He wasn't rushing, but he wasn't holding back either. "You ever feel like something is too good to be true?" he asked as I opened the door. "Every time I see you," I replied without thinking. He didn't kiss me. He didn't need to. The tension between us said more than words ever could. By now, I was thinking about him constantly. I wasn't naive, but something about Ray made me believe this could be different. He was thoughtful, consistent, present. He wasn't flashy or overly romantic, but he made me feel seen in ways no one else had. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. I felt hopeful. He started opening up more. Told me about a failed engagement years ago, how it made him guarded, how he wasn't looking for anything serious until now. I believed him. Every word. We weren't official, hadn't put a label on anything, but I was already all in. And I was sure, maybe foolishly so, that he was too. Something real was blooming, and I didn't want to overthink it. I just wanted to hold on and see where it led. It started with small things. Texts left unanswered for hours, phone calls going straight to voicemail. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was busy with work, maybe he was tired. But the frequency increased, and so did the excuses. One night, he canceled our dinner plans last minute, saying he had to cover a shift. The next day, I saw him driving past the same cafe we always met at alone, not in uniform. I didn't confront him. I wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation. A week later, I bumped into a woman at that same cafe. We reached for the same table and laughed at the coincidence. As we started chatting, something in her eyes changed when I mentioned Ray's name. Ray? Ray Thomas, she asked slowly. I nodded. She paused, then said, Are you dating him too? The word too hit me like a slap. She explained she'd been seeing him for nearly 6 months. He told her he worked long shifts, couldn't always respond. Sounded familiar. I didn't tell her much, just that I'd been seeing him for a little over a month. She looked crushed. I could see it in her face. We exchanged numbers and agreed to talk more later. That evening, I texted Ray, asking to meet. He responded hours later with a vague excuse and promised to call. He didn't. So, I did something I hadn't done until then. I checked his social media. He had nothing public, barely any presence. I tried searching deeper and eventually found an old tagged photo. A woman and a child. The caption read, Family Day Out, blessed beyond words. It was dated just 5 months ago. My stomach dropped. I clicked on the woman's profile. Married to Ray Thomas. Pictures of them on vacation, holding hands, posing with their son. I scrolled for almost an hour, each photo digging the knife deeper. It wasn't just another woman. He had a whole life, a family. And I had been the distraction, the escape. I didn't cry right away. I sat on my couch staring at my phone, numb. All the little details clicked into place. The evasiveness, the disappearing acts, the polished words that sounded too perfect. I had fallen for someone who had rehearsed every step. He never lied outright. He just left out the truth. And I never asked enough questions. When I finally called him, he picked up. I said one sentence. You're married. There was a pause, then a sigh. It's complicated, he said. I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed everything. Every glance, every laugh, every word. I wasn't angry. I was embarrassed. For believing, for hoping, for letting someone in without really knowing who they were. The man I thought was different had turned out to be the same kind I'd sworn I'd never fall for again. And, the worst part? A part of me still missed him. I didn't reach out again. I deleted his number, erased our texts, removed every trace of him from my phone. But forgetting wasn't as easy as deleting. The memories were burned into me. Not because they were dramatic or filled with grand moments, but because they felt real. That's what made the betrayal sting more. He didn't just lie. He made me believe something genuine existed when it never did. A week later, the other woman texted me. She'd confronted him too. He denied everything at first, then admitted parts of it, twisting the story to make it sound like I had come on too strong, that he'd been trying to end things. She didn't believe him. She'd already seen enough. We talked for an hour that night, not just about Ray, but about the pain of being made to feel like a footnote in someone else's story. We weren't enemies. We were both victims of the same illusion. In the weeks that followed, I focused on reclaiming my own space. I went back to the coffee shop, alone this time, and sat where we used to sit. It hurt at first, but I didn't want him to ruin the places I loved. I reconnected with friends I'd unconsciously distanced myself from while wrapped up in his world. I told them the truth, not the full details, but enough. They didn't judge. They just stayed close, which was all I needed. Healing wasn't quick. Some nights, I still thought about calling him. Not out of longing, but to demand answers he never offered. But I knew it wouldn't help. Whatever reasons he had, they didn't matter anymore. The person I thought I knew didn't exist. He was a well-rehearsed mask hiding a man who couldn't be honest with himself, let alone anyone else. One day, I saw him again, by chance, at a red light. He was in uniform this time, in his patrol car. Our eyes met for the briefest moment before he looked away. No nod, no smile, no acknowledgement. Just silence. And that silence was louder than any apology he could have given. I didn't feel rage. I felt peace. It was the final closure I didn't know I needed. Seeing him reduced to just another face in traffic reminded me that he no longer held any power over me. He was just a detour, a mistake that taught me to listen more carefully, to trust more cautiously, to guard my heart with wiser hands. Life moved on. I didn't stop believing in love. I just stopped looking for it in half-truths and unfinished stories. The experience didn't make me bitter. It made me sharper, more aware of what real love should look like. Something consistent, something honest, something that doesn't ask you to doubt your worth. Ray was a chapter, not the whole book. And now, I'm writing the rest myself, with no more unexpected twists. Just the truth.